There is a cognitive bias, a fundamental glitch in our mental software, that is not just a quirk, but one of the most dangerous traps for the human mind. The wisdom it imparts is this: the first stage of incompetence is not the inability to get things right, it is the inability to recognize that you are getting them wrong. This isn't an insult. It is a neurological warning label. It suggests that the most profound ignorance is the kind that is blissfully, and often confidently, unaware of itself. It is a state of being that has a name. But before I give you the name, I want to tell you the story of the man who inspired its discovery. Let's go to Pittsburgh, 1995. A man named McArthur Wheeler decided to rob 2 banks. He was not a criminal mastermind, but he had what he believed to be a stroke of genius. He knew that lemon juice could be used as an invisible ink, becoming visible only when exposed to heat. From this fact, he made a breathtakingly logical and catastrophically wrong leap. He concluded that if he covered his face in lemon juice, it would render him invisible to security cameras. He was not joking. His confidence was absolute. He spent the day robbing 2 banks in broad daylight, smiling directly at the surveillance cameras, his face glistening with citrus. Later that evening, the police knocked on his door. When they showed him the security footage, Wheeler was not just surprised, he was in a state of profound, disbelieving shock. He stared at the crystal-clear image of his own face on the screen and muttered, in genuine confusion, "But I wore the juice." This story is so absurd it's easy to laugh at. But 2 social psychologists, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger, saw something deeper. They weren't interested in his stupidity, they were fascinated by his confidence. How could someone be so wrong, yet so utterly convinced of their own brilliance? They began a series of now famous studies. They tested students on grammar, logic, and humor, and what they found was a consistent, terrifying pattern. The students who performed the worst, the ones in the bottom quartile, did not just fail to get the right answers. They also consistently and dramatically overestimated their own ability. They walked out of the test thinking they had aced it. This phenomenon is now known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it is a double curse. The first curse is that you are incompetent. The second, more insidious curse is that the very skills you lack are the same skills you would need to recognize your own incompetence. A bad grammar student doesn't have the grammatical tools to see their own errors. A bad chess player doesn't have the strategic insight to recognize their own blunders. The less you know, the less equipped you are to know that you know less. This leads to a terrifying peak of false confidence, a place that has been colloquially dubbed Mount Stupid. It is the point where your confidence is at its absolute highest, and your competence is at its absolute lowest. This isn't a story about a foolish bank robber. This is a story about the default setting of the human brain. We see this ghost in the machine everywhere. It is the amateur investor on social media, convinced they have found the secret that has eluded Wall Street for a century. It is the corporate executive, armed with a single business book, who is certain they can solve a complex cultural problem with a simple 3-step plan. It is the person in an argument who mistakes their own volume for the validity of their position. The Dunning-Kruger effect teaches us the most humbling lesson of all, that confidence is not a reliable indicator of knowledge. In fact, it is often an indicator of the lack of it. True expertise is rarely loud. It is quiet, nuanced, and acutely aware of its own limitations. The wisest people are not the ones who have all the answers, but the ones who are most aware of the questions they can't answer. The challenge, then, is not to simply acquire more knowledge. It is to cultivate the much more difficult skill of self-awareness. It is to have the intellectual courage to constantly ask yourself, is this confidence earned through experience, or is it the echo of an empty room? What are the things I don't even know that I don't know? It is the discipline of making sure you are not, at this very moment, standing proudly on the summit of your own Mount Stupid, happily covered in juice.